Welcome to part 2 of the lecture on social construction theory. In the last lecture, we discussed how various categories of difference, race, class, gender, etc., are defined differently in various cultures and across time. In this lecture, I would like to take a closer look at how we construct those categories. Berger and Luckman are two theorists that provide us with a way of viewing this process. They have defined 3 stages by which the social construction of categories occurs. The first stage they call externalization. People create cultural categories through their interactions. They may be tangible items, social institutions, or non-material items such as values and belief. For example, remember a time when you went to see a baby shortly after his or her birth. Was it a boy or a girl? What name was given to the child? How did people behave around the child? Many studies have documented that after the birth of a child, we quickly identify the sex of the child and then dress, name, and treat them based on the gender expectations we have. Consider this. When you met a baby for the first time, can you really tell the child's sex if it is not dressed in pink or blue? Probably not. And yet sociological studies will reveal that when people meet a baby, they look for the cues of the child's gender and then make different comments about the baby and handle them differently. For example, when greeting a male child, people are more likely to comment on the child's strength. They might take the child's arm and say, "Oh, what a little football player. He's going to be a strong one." In meeting a girl baby, they are more likely to comment on her delicacy, sweetness, and how pretty she is. They may even touch her more gently. In this example, the child is identified as a girl or a boy. Through clothing, the sex of the child is signaled to those around him or her. People respond by treating the child in accordance with expectations they associate with that particular sex. In the second stage, we see objectification. In this stage, cultural categories are seen as real. People feel as if the categories have an objective basis in reality and no longer see the categories as products of human creation. For example, in our society, racial categories, black, white, Native American, Asian, etc., are seen as real categories. When we forget our part in the social construction of race, Patricia Orr writes, or fail to recognize the social forces that operate to construct race categories and the meanings associated with them, these categories take on objective realities. For example, consider the category Asian. We all use the term Asian, but who is Asian? Well, according to the census, it refers to a great many different groups, many who have seen themselves as quite distinct and have been at war with one another. The category Asian includes people from such diverse communities as Samoa, Vietnam, India, Japan, Korea, Mien, Hmong, and more. Does a Samoan identify with a person of Hmong descent on the basis of ethnicity? It is doubtful. And yet in our country, we use census data based on these classifications to assess need in particular communities. Nonprofit organizations will frequently write grants based on data on Asians in their service area. Monies will be dispersed depending upon which category appears to hold the largest portion of the population. In this instance, the socially constructed category of Asian has taken on a reality of its own. The third stage, Berger and Luckman call internalization. The third stage refers to the process of socialization by which we as individuals learn the cultural constructions of our society. This occurs through socialization. Patricia Orr writes, "The process of social interaction by which people learn the way of life of their society and where they learn their specific roles in that society." Through socialization, we learn our society's values, beliefs, and behaviors. We learn about the statuses, social positions we occupy, and the roles, expectations, associated with those statuses. We have internalized social constructions when we perceive these constructions become part of how we understand the world and ourselves. For example, Gerbner argues that a story about our culture is told through the media. In the media, a more violent world is depicted. Masculinity is portrayed as aggressive, women are seen as less authoritative than men, poor people are rarely shown, and seniors are portrayed negatively. In his study of media, Gerbner found that in comparison with light viewers, heavy television viewers would be less likely to vote for an equally qualified female candidate for president. Heavy viewers would perceive more danger in being out in public places at night. They believe that racism is more of a thing of the past, and yet they are more likely to support separatism between the races. In this example, the media offers constructions about gender, race, class, and age. Those who are heavy viewers are more likely to internalize the constructions as fact. Once perceived as reality, they become a part of how the individual sees the world, themselves, and those around them. Their decisions will be affected by their views. What we learn through our social interaction is affected by our social location in society. Our social location refers to our place at a crossroad of variables such as race, ethnicity, class, age, sex, gender, sexual orientation, ability, age, etc. This brings us to the matrix of domination. Patricia Hill Collins in 1991 first described the matrix of domination. She uses this concept to illuminate the ways in which systems of domination based on categories of difference, race, class, sexuality, etc., interrelate in our society. A person does not, for example, experience race separately from class or gender. These variables intertwine in our experience. Consider the experience of Sojourner Truth. Truth is well known for her speech, "Ain't I a Woman?" She delivered it at the Women's Convention in Akron, Ohio in 1851. Here is an excerpt from her speech. She said, "That man over there says that women need to be helped into their carriages and lifted over ditches and to have the best place everywhere. Nobody ever helps me into carriages or over mud puddles or gives me any best place. And ain't I a woman? Look at me, look at my arm. I have plowed and planted and gathered into barns, and no man could head me, and ain't I a woman? I could work as much and eat as much as a man when I could get it, and bear the lash as well, and ain't I a woman? I have borne 13 children and seen most all sold off to slavery, and when I cried out with my mother's grief, none but Jesus heard me, and ain't I a woman?" In this example, Sojourner Truth experiences a very different kind of oppression than the oppression experienced by white women she compares herself to. During Sojourner's time, white women, especially wealthy ones, were oppressed by a chivalrous paternalism that stressed white women's fragility and need for protection. In contrast, as an African American slave, Sojourner was expected to have enormous strength and was not considered deserving of such protection. Using Collins' concept of the matrix of oppression, we can understand that Truth experienced oppression based on the way her race, gender, and class intertwine. It is not an additive approach to oppression. In other words, Truth is not simply doubly oppressed because she is a black woman. Instead, it is more complex than that. Her experience is determined by the ways these variables intertwine. The concept of the matrix allows us to see that we all experience sources of privilege and disadvantage. For example, white people of all classes experience privilege because they are white, but many white people experience oppression as well. For example, whites constitute the numerical majority of people below the poverty line. For those whites below the poverty line, they experience discrimination on the basis of class, and they are privileged because of their race. We'll stop there. Thank you so much.